John Maxwell says, everyone communicates, but few connect. At the end of the day, communication is all about connecting. Yet for some of us, communication is just about informing. Communication is just about dumping information. Communication is just about telling people what they should believe. That's not how to communicate, and you are not going to win in your relationships if you communicate that way. That's why Speak With People has created a 7-part mini course called How to Communicate. It is the principles of true connection, and we'll take you through each of those through 7 videos where we'll help you unpack how you can become an incredible communicator and how you can win in your relationships. Go to speakwithpeople.com/how to communicate and buy the course today. Welcome to the Speak With People podcast. My name is Jason Raitz. I'll be your host, and this podcast exists to help you improve your communication skills. Whether you communicate one-on-one, to a team, from a stage, or from behind a screen, we know that when we improve our communication skills as leaders, it exponentially changes everything. It improves our relationships, it improves our leadership skills, and it improves our business skills. So let's get ready to dive into this next episode. Well, is it your time to start a podcast in 2024? Have you been thinking about it for a while? You've been holding back. Maybe you started one a couple years ago and you only went to about 7 episodes and you've been wondering, should I go back? Or you're just asking the questions, how can I successfully run a podcast and grow listeners, pour into them, give them different content that they need to be able to be successful? Well, we're gonna answer those questions. We're gonna ask more questions like, how do you plan for consistency and how do you get guests on your show? We're gonna dive into all things podcasts, and I've been looking forward to this episode for some time because I get to interview a friend and a leader that I highly admire and highly respect. He gave me a ton of time back, I want to say in January at some conference. We met up somewhere in 2023, and he just poured into me. His name is Eric Nevins. He is the president of the Christian Podcaster Association, and I can't thank him enough for being on the show. Eric, welcome, and thanks for being on the Speak With People podcast.
Jason, thanks for having me, brother. I'm so excited to be here. I love what you do. I see you all over my social feed because I'm always liking your stuff. And
yes, you are.
I really appreciate it. So thanks for the chance to be here.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm just so honored. I just got to know, though, because it's a little bit warm here in Tampa. You guys have snow way up there today?
Yeah. How dare you even bring that up? It's, look, Thursday, I had like 15 inches of snow coming down. It was the biggest snowstorm in like 22 years in my area. But here's the beautiful thing, because I know you're from like the Midwest also, like I am. In the Midwest, you get a snowstorm like that, it's probably going to be around for a month or better, right? This time of year even?
Yep.
Not in Colorado. And don't tell anybody this, particularly those people who want to move here from California. Sorry, but the snow's not that bad. So we got snow. It's already melting. It's already got, like, there's still piles because it was a lot of it this time. End of the week, it'll be gone. So it's okay. It was beautiful. It was fun to see and have a little fire in the fireplace, have a snow day. Everybody was home. And then we're good to go. We're good to go get back outside.
Oh, man. Well, I wish I missed it, but 3 years here in Tampa, and maybe someday I'll miss it. But
it's the heat and the sweltering summers for me that keep me out of Florida. I'll tell you that.
It is rough. Well, hey, take us into your story a little bit. Who you are, what you do.
Oh, yeah.
Let's let our listeners know a little bit more about your journey.
Sure. So I founded Christian Podcasters Association, started as a free Facebook group in 2017. I'd started my own podcast a year before that. And there just weren't any great places at the time for Christians to get together and help each other, right? And to kind of see, you've got a podcast similar to mine. Let's collaborate, those kinds of things. So I started as a Facebook group to just draw Christian podcasters together, help share some of what I'd learned about the industry and that kind of thing. And it just kind of kept coming in. People kept joining, and I was like, oh, okay, that's great. We're now close to 4,000 members in that group. We have, and then so about 2020, perfect time to start a business. I decided to start a membership, and what was great about that is everybody's already online because we're kind of forced to doing a lot of stuff online, so it made a lot of sense to people. And so we have a membership where we get together, and you're going to come be one of our speakers soon. We talk, we learn from the best,
Mm.
and we learn from each other. And we do member spotlights, get people to speak into whatever issues we're having. I love that. I do coaching for podcasters as well, help people start, help them grow, help them get to that monetization mark, where they can actually have a connection with their audience enough that people want to pay them for the transformation that they're offering. So,
Mm.
but I didn't get here, easy. Like it was, everybody wants to say that, some people make entrepreneurship look easy. That is not me. That's not my story. I went to school to be a pastor, actually, wanted to, which I know you were, but I never actually was. I kind of graduated in the middle of the downturn
Mm.
in 2009. And then um, there was no, just like the kind of jobs that I wanted didn't exist anymore.
Mm.
And so I ended up staying in the financial world for another, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, being really mad about it. In that time I discovered podcasting, kind of the rest is history, but it was a long road.
Wow. Financial world. I guess I missed that. Which part of the financial world were you in?
That's because I don't look like a financial guy. Like I really don't. Like, it's not my world. I was really kind of miserable there. Met a lot of great people,
Yep.
and I love those people. And I still see them on Facebook and stuff, but it just wasn't my jam. Right. It was
Mm.
like to give you context, for the last few years I was there, my job was literally to ruin people's day. Right. I was a
Mm.
bouncer. So I would bounce people's checks. I would block their debit cards. I would look
Oh.
for transactions. Like somebody else, for a long time, I was the person who would get that phone call, and then have to clean up that mess. And then I was like, I forget this. I'm gonna just make the mess instead. And it's just not a great way to. It just doesn't feel good, right? It's
Mm.
not the kind of thing where I feel like I'm doing something meaningful, even though I'm protecting assets. I guess there's valuable things there, but I just didn't like it. And so it was a hard place for me to be. Uh, but when I discovered podcasting, I found a way to go, hey, this is actually something I can do in my free time that can help the world and can kind of draw on some of the expertise that I developed in seminary and things like that, and share something different and new with the world, which I really am grateful for.
Mm. Well, and going back to your, part of your journey with coaching, off record, as Eric and I were getting ready for the interview, he coached me a little bit, and like I started taking notes so I can really speak to Eric's coaching. And so thank you, for all the ways you have breathed life into me and speak with people on the podcast. Like I know you do that for a lot of leaders across the country, world probably. And so let me just be one more voice that says thank you.
Well, you're nice. You're kind. Look, I believe that that the kingdom of God that Jesus talked about goes forward in content in the 21st century. And so I want to help as many people as I can develop their voices. It's also, not only is it a critical part of the spiritual journey, it's a critical part of becoming your own person, to develop your own voice and be able to have an impact or share in the world something that you want to do. So that's why I do it. So you're nice, but it's a much bigger mission for sure.
So good. Okay, talk to us about podcasting in 2024. Like, how have you seen the podcasting landscape evolve since you started? And is this a time to jump in? Are there too many? Is it too saturated?
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Right. Well, okay. That's the thing that I hear a lot is, oh, everybody has a podcast now, right? But here's what's happened is really, you think everybody has a podcast because celebrities have podcasts now, right? They didn't have podcasts way back when.
Yep.
We're starting to get a lot of those. So they're getting more publicity, but the number of podcasts is actually still pretty small. I looked it up and I don't have the exact numbers right in front of me, but we will ballpark it. So let's say there's maybe like 2.5 or 2.8 million podcasts, like active podcasts. Wait, sorry, let me get that right. So hold on. I'm sorry, Jason. Let me make sure I get these numbers right, because
Yes.
I don't want to mess people up. I can't remember if it's 2.8 or like 4 million. I've seen different numbers, but it's really not as many as you think, right? So when you compare that to like the number of YouTube channels, like there's millions of them, right?
Ooh.
Compare that to the number of blogs, there's tens of millions of them,
Right.
and websites. By comparison, it's really small. And I'll give you an example of my niche, which is the religion and spirituality niche and the Christian category specifically. I saw a stat recently that said there were about 74,000 active Christian podcasts. Right?
Wow.
That's not really that many. I mean, how
No,
many would you have guessed that many? No, probably
no,
not.
no. I mean, there's 300,000 plus churches in America alone. So
Right.
yeah.
Right. A vast majority of those active podcasts are churches sharing their sermons.
Wow.
Right. So the number of us people, just regular people starting podcasts about an issue that we care about a transformation we want to see in people's lives is actually really, really small compared to the number of other things out there. So if you think that there isn't enough room for you, the answer is that's just simply not true. There is room for you, for your voice, even if somebody else is already doing it. You have your own twist on it. You should absolutely start a podcast. It's a great way to start your um, uh, attraction of people that you want to serve. It's not the only thing you should do. I always tell people it's the top of the funnel, as it were, right? It's kind of the free content. And it can be slow, right? It takes a little bit of time to really build up to where you want to be. But it can be done, and it's a fun way to do it as well.
I love that. I always joke with my buddy, Dr. Tom, who I feel like you guys would be best of friends. I've got to make sure I mutually connect you guys. He has a great podcast, Liminal Living.
Oh yeah. Is it Rundell? Tom Rundell?
Yes, Tom Rundell. Yeah, he's in the group.
I know him, but I don't think we're connected. So I need
to. I got to connect you guys. But we're always talking about our podcast. You know, if we went a little more sexier, you know, talked about football, making money, you know, some of those kind of things. You know, because you talked about it can be a slow go. I've definitely run into that. But here's one thing I have learned. Everybody's slow go is different across the board. So what you may think is slow, somebody may be looking at you going, "Oh my goodness, how can I be like their podcast? It's just blowing up and it's all over the place."
Yeah, exactly. I think what happens a lot of times is people compare other people's middle or late stages of their career, right, to the beginning of theirs. Look, so the big example is always Joe Rogan, right? He's the number one podcast in the world, which, by the way, I think suggests that shorter is not necessarily better, right? Like, I mean, he has a long, 2 or 3 hours, something like that podcast, and people listen to it. It's the number one podcast in the world. So look, I don't think shorter is necessarily what people are looking for. They're looking to be entertained. Is quality is the big deal. Having said that, Joe Rogan has started building a audience when, right? Like, I don't even know when his career started, when he was a stand-up. Was that the 80s, early 90s?
Oh, yeah.
I remember him being on Fear Factor, right?
Right.
But so he had been building a following for decades before podcasts even became part of his life. Well, don't compare yourself to him. He had an on-ramp, right? So start yourself where you are and allow it to build and commit to it for long term. So don't say to yourself, "Hey, if this isn't, it doesn't get the downloads I want in 10 episodes, I'm going to quit." That's why most people quit. You can't do that. You need to commit. I always challenge new podcasters to commit for a year and then reevaluate. And really, if they come to me after a year, what I'm going to say is, "Great, you did great work. Now you know how to do it. Now let's start to build on it," right? And so then we can build from there. We can go, well, this is our baseline. What are we going to do now in order to get to, to where we want to go? One of those things that happens is, like, I saw you've had some really amazing guests recently, and you're at what? Are you at 120 or something episodes?
Yeah. Well, 107, but
give or take.
Yeah, give or take.
So, somewhere around 100, there's this inflection point where all of a sudden you can get bigger guests, you can get people with more credibility and more authority in your niche, and then because they go, "Oh, this person's been around," and they don't look like they're stopping. And that's kind of my favorite spot to work with people, is between 100 and 200 episodes, because that's really where you've got the good foundation and you can start going on from there.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I felt like the first 30, I was still trying to figure out, what am I talking about? Like, I have an idea. You're finding your identity. You're finding your voice. You're finding your groove. but consistency is, you just nailed it. What are some steps that people who are thinking about starting a podcast, they need to know about consistency? Like, is it once a week? Is it once a month? Is it, however much it is? How do you coach people to kind of figure that out?
Yeah. So depending on what the purpose of your podcast is, I see a lot of people doing now twice a month or either once a week. And I still recommend once a week. The most valuable thing you can do is to show up in the lives of your people, the people who you want to serve, on a consistent basis. So like for me, um, my life doesn't work this way anymore, but when I worked at the bank, um, I would be very excited. Let's take Thursday, right? I'd be excited on Thursday because I knew there were certain podcasts that came out on Thursday, right? And I knew that at least for an hour of my day, I was not going to be bored. I was going to enjoy some time with my favorite podcasters. That's what you want. You want to become one of those people. The average podcast listener listens to, I think last stat I heard was 7 podcasts a week, 7 different shows a week. So
Wow.
you want to be one of those shows that they listen to. The way to do that is to create content on a regular basis. Show up if you make a promise. So for my halfway there listeners, I'm on a little bit of a hiatus right now, so I will admit that to you. But when I normally publish, it's like 3 a.m. Mountain Time on Monday, right? It's coming out, and so Monday morning, people wake up on the East Coast and they've got halfway there in their feed and they're ready to go. So that's the idea, and it still works. Like it still works if you just do it and you're faithful to it. Then you got to do some other things. You need to share. You need to be willing to be on social media. This is a thing that drives me a little bit crazy right now, is the number of people who tell me they don't really like social media. And I get there's lots of reasons not to like social media, but if you turn it into a tool to connect with the people that you want to serve, it's amazing. It's brilliant.
Right. And that's why, this episode is within it's week 7 of 8 of a series called Online with People, because we spend so much time online. Every Sunday morning, my iPhone tells me this is how much time you spent. Right. And I'm like, oh no. But so much of my business is online. I mean, I literally just got off a call with a pastor in Northeast Ohio who said, I follow you online. I love what you're about. Really want to take my team through your Preach with People program.
Cool.
I mean, it was just like, that's available, right, to, folks online. And so how do we utilize that? Talk for a second to the person, because I run into people all the time who are like, I don't like podcasts. Podcasts are a waste of time. Two really different things there, but talk to the person who's been on the fence of going, I've been thinking about listening to podcasts. What do I get from it?
Oh man, well, you can get anything you want from a podcast, which is the brilliant part, right? There are podcasts for almost anything that you can imagine. I'll give you an example. One of our members in our membership, her name is Paula. She has a show about quilting, right? And she says every quilt has a story.
Oh,
and so what she does is I know, isn't that great? She's
so
amazing.
good.
She goes and she interviews quilters. Now, is it all, about, Christian quilters? No, which is what I love about it. She'll talk to anybody who has a story, and she'll talk to some of the big people in her space, get their story. And when she does have an opportunity to share the gospel or talk to somebody who's got kind of a similar message to her, she does it, and her audience can get it that way. But she's influencing in a niche that you and I would probably not be that interested in, right? So regardless of what you're into, there's probably a podcast that for somebody who can give you, some detail, man. I'm big. My things are like the St. Louis Cardinals, culture, and I'll listen to, I was listening to Ask NT Write Anything today, like some theology. This is what happens when you're a Bible nerd. And other things like that, but they're very, very niche. So you can find something that you want if you want to. Yeah.
Oh, I love that. And for me, it's free education. It's free. Yeah. So your commute, your walk, your workout, doing the dishes, even if you're into true crime, I mean, there's so many different opportunities, and not all of them are free. Some are subscription based, and
right.
all of that kind of stuff. But
The three things that you'll hear people talk about a lot is educate, inspire, and what's the other thing? Oh, Jason, I just forgot the other one. What's the other thing? You know what I'm talking about?
educate, inspire. I've lost as well.
I can't even remember. Oh, I'm a great podcaster. That's good. I'm glad I'm here. Jason.
No.
Anyway, entertain, educate, and inspire. That's what it is. There we go. Entertainment. So I don't really do a lot of entertainment. I do a lot of inspiration and education, but educate, entertain, and inspire. I set them out of order. So that's why. But anyway, those are the things. And so whether you're looking to kill some time, right? Somebody said to me just today, they were on a drive. I think they drove up here from Dallas to Denver, where I live. They were like, "Hey, on drive, that's really when podcasts come in handy, right? Because you can listen to us." Yes, that's perfect. Like you're talking about, you go for a walk. I listen to a lot at the gym, and sometimes you need silence, and that's fine. You should do that as well. But if you're looking to fill a little space while you're doing the dishes or making dinner or cleaning around the house, that's actually when most people listen to their podcasts. So you can do that too.
And I love the access it gives you to people as well. Like, one of the podcasts I love is with, I can't remember the name of it. I love it so much, but Dana Carvey and David Spade.
Oh yeah.
And two long-term comedians. I mean, Dana Carvey, it's like, you just have a peek, behind the curtain of, the stuff that you've never, or like Nate Bargatze's podcast where he's, talking through all the stories. I mean, I'm like, I love that. It's just fascinating. It, kind of fills me up. And then I love the other side. So really interesting enough, I've started listening to this podcast called Young and Profiting, even though I'm not young, but
but you're profiting, I hope.
Right. So it's by a woman by the name of Hala Taha. And she's, you know Hala. I mean, it's just crazy. But I was listening to some of her tactics, how she grew her podcast. I mean, it's like intense. I mean, she started every episode direct messaging 200 people on LinkedIn. Hey, I think you'd love this podcast. I just talked about this. And then that started to grow. So she hired a VA, and then her and the VA direct to message 200 people. I think there's just this rumor out there, and I see it all the time as I coach speakers. Speakers just expect, oh, I'm going to tell the world I'm a speaker, and now the phone's going to ring, and all the events are going to call me. I've found it happens for 0.001% of people. They were in the right time, right place. They're a celebrity, something happened. For everybody else, it's a build, right? And so maybe walk us through some of the best tactics you've learned to grow your podcast, as you kind of keep it consistently going. What are some of the things that you can do to grow and to build it and to make sure you're providing quality content for your listeners?
Well, so I have kind of 5 things that I talk about are sort of the basics for marketing your podcast. And there's some of them are the usual things, but maybe not all of them are. They're sort of basic for any online business. But if you're not willing to do these things, your podcast definitely won't grow. I love the messaging people. Like that's really a fascinating idea of like how they've just kind of going above and beyond. So I would consider that. But let me give you these 5 things.
Yeah.
The first one is email. We talked about that, right?
Yep.
You need to have an email list because none of the other platforms are reliable, and you need to be getting people on your list. I've heard from 2 very influential people in the online space say their number one regret in their business is not starting the email list sooner, right? Because that's how they connect to their people. So definitely do that. Email every single episode. And then one of the best ways, one of my favorite ways to use email is to just email a question. I do this every once in a while. I try not to do it too much, but every, let's say, quarter or so, I'll pick one question to my audience. And maybe it's something as simple as, hey, what's something that you're struggling with in your podcast right now? Right? Just a simple question. And then that's it. It just says, dear, whoever that person's name is. Here's the question. Keep podcasting, Eric, right? That's it. And then people will respond to that. And so then that becomes an occasion for a conversation that I get to start with my people. And I will sometimes spend days. I select my times, right? But I spend days going back and forth with people, encouraging, helping them. And that builds a lot of trust.
Yeah.
Right. That builds a lot. So that's one way to use your email list to help build your podcast, to help get them. Okay. The second one is social media. We talked about that a little bit. I just think you have such an opportunity to somehow connect with your people. I do the same thing on social. I ask questions, and I just asked one recently. What did you accomplish in the first quarter of 2024? Right. And people commented. And one person who I used to work with, she said, I love seeing all the people killing it right now. Right. I was like, I love that. Right. So she's getting inspired from just reading that. I like to ask questions about my episodes when I have an episode. Ask a question that pertains to your episode that nobody knows yet, right? Because the episode comes out, let's say it comes out Monday, and so Wednesday before, I'm going to ask this question and start priming the pump on my social media for the topic, right? Those are some things that I'll do, and then it's really easy to go in if you ask a question vaguely enough, people will fill in the gaps, leave a little bit of gaps for people to fill it in. So like my favorite example is if you, because people love to talk and they love to think they're adding something to the conversation, right?
Yep.
So if I say, which is better for a peanut butter and jelly, strawberry or grape jelly, right? Some people are going to say strawberry. Some people are going to say grape. And you're going to have that one Yahoo who says orange marmalade, right? You're like, what? Where'd that come from? I don't even, where are you from? Okay. But people are going to fill that in. Anyway, so that's my whole kind of, if you can make those connections, then you can ask people. Let's say somebody says grape, right? And then you go and ask them a second question. Do you like, is it Welch's or Smucker's, right? And now you've got a second question and they're going to answer it. And you've turned one comment into 3 or 4 or 5, right? That's how you do that.
Wow.
But you're building that rapport with people while you're doing it. You can always, now if you did an episode about peanut butter and jelly and the history and why it's all, where it all comes from, whatever, that'd be a cool podcast. I don't know who has that podcast, but we need to find it. Then you can take that. Let's say you did that on Wednesday. You're having this conversation all weekend with people about it. Monday, your episode comes out, post it on that thread and just say, guys, I got this comment, or I created this episode. You guys inspired me, so much. I hope you give it a listen. Everybody who commented in that gets a notification, right? That, hey, Eric commented on that thread, and maybe they'll go check it out because you've already primed the pump. So anyway, that's one way to do social media. I happen to do that on Facebook. I see people killing it on even places like TikTok, right? With just questions, asking people to fill in some information, tell me something that you don't know. Okay. So email, social media, having great guests, which you're really great at. And I'm not just saying that self-servingly.
Well, thank you.
But having great guests is really powerful and really good. If you get people who you can borrow their audience, you can borrow their authority, still is a really big deal. There's an interesting phenomenon too, where super huge people don't tend to share your episode, right? But if you can, people who maybe are still doing the work and building, will, right? Because that's what they want to do. So target those people. Also get free books from publishers. Most people don't know about that. It's my favorite thing. My library, I mean, you can only see just the pretty ones that I put behind me, but it's all over here. I got so many books that I've gotten, and I do buy books, but on a very limited basis, because I can get pretty much any book that I want for free. You just can ask people to do that. All right. Number 4 is be a guest on podcasts. And so go out on different shows where your audience is hanging out. So remember how I said the average podcast listener listens to 7 shows. You want to get on those 7 shows that your ideal listener is on. I have a long story about it, but I'll give you a short version. This is how I found the guy named Michael O'Neill, who has a show named the Solopreneur Hour. Love that dude. He was on John Lee Dumas's podcast on Entrepreneurs on Fire. They're friends. And so they had a conversation, and I really dug it. I moved over to Michael O'Neill's podcast, started listening to it. His style really fit me better than the other one. So I really became an avid listener of him. I was emailing him questions because he had free coaching Friday. So I would email him questions, and he would say, Eric from Colorado, wrote in this question, and he would answer it. Right. That was powerful because he was a guest on a show. I ran into him at Podcast Movement last year. It was Podfest last year, and told him how much it meant to me. Right. Cause it was just his content really inspired my entire journey. One last thing about him, he had a list of books, right? That he was like, if you want to be an entrepreneur, you need to read these books. I did it. I bought every book. I read them all. And so I got to tell him, dude, that changed my life. Right?
Wow.
Powerful, right? Powerful.
Oh my goodness.
Just because he guested on a show.
Right.
Right. So there's a lot of power to that. And then lastly is build a community. And so whether that's a Facebook group or some other, you can use Mighty Networks. There's all kinds of ways to go about doing that. Depends on what makes sense in your context. But bring people together. I really love what Caitlin Beatty said. She wrote a book called Celebrities for Jesus. And she says, celebrity is influence without proximity, right? So this is one of those reasons that we'll just take a celebrity pastor, for instance. It's one thing for a pastor in Georgia to be discussing and telling his people what a passage means for them in their lives. That would look very different in the Mountain West, right? Or it may look very different in the Mountain West. It might look different how engaged and based on issues. And so she would say, hey, you need to be in community, right? In order to apply these things. I think that's true, especially for us as Christian podcasters. I do not want to be an influencer who doesn't know my people. And I do not want to be the center of Christian Podcasters Association. So I've worked really hard to create a group where people are connected. Maybe I'm putting up posts, but there are connections and that people find each other inside that group every day that I had known nothing about anymore. And I'm glad for that to be the case, right? I want it to be centered around the community and not really about me. I want my influence to be, I brought us together. I curated this community, and that's it.
Yes.
Or at least the primary thing.
Yeah. Wow. Sorry, I'm writing that down because that was, that's just gold, Eric.
If you haven't read that book, dude, it's a great listen. And I listened to it at the gym last year, but it's so good.
Oh boy, I love that. That is incredible. It's boy, I'm looking through this list and I'm just trying to figure out what are the areas that Speak with People we need to really, move into. And I virtually have been on no podcast yet, a couple here and there, but I just, been investing time. And now I'm like, okay, this is the year.
Yeah.
My book will be coming out, Speak with People, Not at Them. So I'm like, okay, this is the year, I need to do that. The email list, I love the asking questions. I don't know if we do that, good enough on our email list. So I love that. This is gold. Thank you so much.
It's also the simplest email to send in the world, right?
Yeah.
You could do it in 5 minutes and you just send it and you'll get responses back. And if you time your question right, so the thread through all these things, I don't know if this was clear, but is really, you're making it about the other people, right? You're making it about the people that you're serving. It's not really about you. It's about how you are serving them, your audience, and what they need, how you're bringing them either into a community or giving them content online or even spurring conversation, like that's social media posts. Man, you do it right, you can really curate a conversation that makes it a great place to be.
So good. Let me ask you just two questions. Our time, I want to make sure I honor our time, but I could ask you 100 more. But in this series, Online with People, we've talked a little bit about what happens when people start really getting online and all of a sudden you've got some comments and some trolls. Recently, Speak with People podcast, we got a real nasty review, more about me. And then it looks like, we've been hit with like the 1-star troll. And, at the beginning I was like, oh my goodness, like my world is falling apart. This is just crazy. And then I was like, this is, as we continue to expand and reach more people and influence, this is going to happen more and more. How lead us through that. How do you handle that? How do you get prepared for that? It's going to come. It's going to happen. Trolls are there. People are going to say awful things. So give us some of your thoughts.
Well, listen, this is great advice and I don't always follow it well because we all have feelings, right? We all feel like, hey, we're human. But look, there's 8 billion people on this planet. Not all of them are going to like you, right? Unfortunately, that's the case. You just got to come to terms with that and let it be the case. So some people won't, some of them will leave you a review. I've had people question like my theology when I've had people on that I don't necessarily agree with, but I'm letting them share their stuff, and it is what it is.
Yep.
It's okay. I don't have to be all things to all people, and neither do you. So just be who you are. That's what you're called to do. The other thing that I love to do, particularly on social with trolls, is I love to say things that I know they're going to respond to, because that's just engagement, right?
Yes.
So here's the weirdest one. I say this all the time. I will, or not all the time. Every once in a while, I will just post something as simple as "God is love" with the little hearts behind it. Like God is love. This is a direct quote from Scripture, right? A direct quote, right? It's absent context, but it's a quote.
Yep.
Some people will lose their minds about that, and they will tell me all the reasons why I shouldn't say it. Remember how I said say something incomplete so people will fill in all the gaps? Oh, they got lots of gaps to fill in about God's love. And I'm like, I don't think that's maybe how it works, but okay.
Ugh.
And I'll actually engage them, and I'll say, well, tell me, I'll ask them a question, and I'll say, well, but what about this or whatever. And like one irritating comment can turn into 20 comments that then more people see because there was some engagement on it. So I like to use them. I mean, it's not very, maybe it's not the nice way to put it, but I like to channel that energy, right? Let's move it into, let's use it for my good.
And those channels love engagement. And so
They do. I mean, that's what engagement is. Engagement. The worst thing is to put something out there and nobody sees it.
right.
Nothing happens at all. Right.
Yeah.
So I'd much rather say something that people are like, hey, you can't say that, or, or wait, that's not true, whatever. Okay. Let's talk about that.
Yep.
And then maybe I'll come to some other conclusion. I don't know. But so that's kind of how I feel. A 1-star review. I mean, I would read it on your podcast. Like, you got it right now. Let's read it. Read it on your show and share and go, hey, look, do you feel that way? Ask your audience. Do you feel that way? And if you don't, will you want to leave me a review,
I love that.
To counterbalance that? I would love a few extra over here. That'd be great.
I love it. I love it. That's great. Okay. One other thing I wanted to ask you. So when it comes to monetizing your podcast, you help people, you help podcasters kind of walk through that. What are the things you've got to be prepared for? You got to be ready for, as you walk towards that monetization level.
Yeah. So monetization is really just packaging the transformation that you're offering your audience in a way that they can purchase. So that is the key. And if you don't know what you're offering your audience really, then you can't ever monetize it.
Yeah.
Right. And I see a lot of people do that. And so that's one of the things you have to start with, is knowing what you're offering, knowing the transformation that they're getting. And then you could turn that into all kinds of things. I think a lot of people think that it's hard, and a lot of people think that it's a thing that, maybe only geniuses can do or something. But the reality is, anybody can you can monetize almost anything, right? It can be, your podcast can become a membership. You can do things like merch. You can have events where you bring people. You could either do them online. I've got a friend, Jen Klein, who does events online. She's really great at that. You can do an in-person thing. I'm looking at doing a in-person, come like a mastermind, one day mastermind here in Denver. Fly here. We get in a room, and 8, 10, 12 of us, however many, sit around and workshop your podcast. Everybody get some time, and we workshop your podcast. What do you need to do next? And then you go execute it. Right.
Love that.
That sounds like fun, and I know that people will pay to do that.
Yeah.
Because it is specifically helpful to them and where they want to go next. So there's all kinds of things that you can do. I would say the mistake most people make is they try to do it way too early before they've figured out what people want from them. So that's maybe the other thing I would say, is find out what people want. Ask them. Sell it before you build it is a mistake I think many of us in the online space make. We build it and we're like, oh, this is going to be so cool. And we send a lot of emails and we do a lot of posts, and then nobody wants it. And so instead, you can spend a bunch of time on a landing page and do the same thing and see if that generates any sales, and then build it if it does.
Yep. Been there.
Yeah, oh, totally. It's so common. It's so common. It's not like believe me, I'm not throwing any shade to anybody because I have done it as well. But if you learn that, the sooner you learn it, the better off you're going to be.
Yeah. What about finding sponsors for your podcast? Is that attainable?
Yeah.
Do you have to be at, the 100,000 episode, level? What do you think about that?
Well, the beautiful thing about online is there are no rules, right?
Mm.
There are no so one of my mentors, he called it the MSU method, make stuff up, like that's so you can make up whatever you want. I know one guy who had an ice cream shop sponsor his podcast. Like his podcast is listened to all over the country, right? But a local ice cream shop was like, I love what you're doing. I want to sponsor your show. He goes, okay. And so he got money. He was like, yeah, let's do that. You can find, there's all kinds of people. So I might give you, for instance, let's say the quilting podcast, right? I'm sure there are quilting manufacturers, thread, or yarn, whatever, there's all kinds of people, right? Different kinds of people in that world who want to reach those people.
Yep.
Right. And so you reach out to them, and regardless, the thing that has held me back as a limiting belief is that I have to have a lot of downloads in order to do that. But the reality is, if you have the right audience, you can attract somebody who also wants to reach that exact audience.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is.
Yep. Oh, love that. I love that. Well, this was absolute gold. I mean, you just took us, on a master class in this episode. I can't thank you enough. Before I move on, let you go, I want to ask you some questions. We're building this online communication skills library spreadsheet where every single guest we've ever had, we put their favorites, and then we've got different sheets for all the best YouTube videos, all the best books if you want to grow in certain areas, and all for free. So if you've never been to speakwithpeople.com/skills library, you can go access it today. But Eric was wondering, is there a speaker that you every single time they communicate, they fill you up, you recommend them to other people? What do you think about that?
Oh man. Who I really love is Sky Jitani from the Holy Post. I think he's really great. I've seen some of his sermons. I just love the way he understands the gospel and translates that to life.
Yeah.
I like that.
I love that. Is there a podcast that you turn to, either guilty pleasure, development, that you just kind of keep going back to, you want to recommend because it's so life-giving?
Oh, that's a good question. The one I go to most right now is the Holy Post with Sky Jitani and Phil Vischer. But I also love, I mentioned this earlier, Ask NT Wright Anything. There have been times when NT Wright has kept me on the straight and narrow. That's good. So let me give you one other one that I think people might really like. It's a show called Truce by my friend Chris Staron. And he says he uses journalistic tools to look inside the Christian church.
Wow.
And so he tells stories. Sometimes he'll send me an email and ask me to do some voices or do some lines, read some lines, because he kind of weaves it all together as a master storyteller. It's brilliant.
I love it. And lastly, is there a book that every leader, you've got to read this book? It's foundational.
I'm gonna say Rejection Proof by Jia Zhang.
Oh.
I read that book as part of a mindset series that I put together myself. And I could probably give you the other like 5 or 6 that I included in that, but that one helped me a lot because it helped me understand that rejection is not about me. Right? Rejection is usually about the person on the other side. And so sometimes it's just asking that question, like, okay, so it's a no, but why? Why is it a no? What's going on? And then, so he tells a story. He was trying to get rejected. He tells a story. He knocks on somebody's random door and he's like, hey, can I plant these flowers in your front yard? He thought nobody's going to say no to that. Right. The guy goes, no way. And he's like, oh, why? He goes, because I kill everything. But that lady over there would love those. Why don't you take them to her house? Right.
Right.
And it wasn't about the flowers. It was about his ability. So learning that really, really helped me, particularly in my marketing, because you know how it is. You put stuff out there and sometimes it's, you're in little control of whether people see it or not. And that helped me a lot.
I love that. All right. Where's a great place we can find you online? We'll post that in the show notes, put it in our Speak with People community group, and point people to where they can connect with you.
Absolutely. Well, so the best place is ChristianPodcastersAssociation.com. And if you go to ChristianPodcastersAssociation.com/speakwithpeople, I will have for you my free access to my private podcast called Perfect Podcast Promotion, a plan for sustained podcast growth.
Wow.
It's 8 episodes. I'm just putting it out, but you can get it for free. Just sign up for your email list. And if you got a podcast, it's not growing the way you want, but podcasts are powerful. And you're like, hey, I really would love to not only reach people, but grow this into something. I know a lot of us we want to grow what we do online into a ministry, a business, something that really makes an impact on the world to become our life. If that's you, then ChristianPodcastersAssociation.com/speakwithpeople. And you can get that download. I go into a lot more depth with some of the things that I said here, and that is there for you.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for your generosity. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
And thank you for being on this episode, Eric. I've loved talking with you, and I know this conversation is going to help a lot of our listeners. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me. Every interaction I have with you is delightful. So thanks a lot.
Well, thank you for joining us on another episode of the Speak with People podcast. We hope that you were encouraged. We hope that you were inspired and challenged to improve your communication skills. I want to thank you again for being a part of the Speak with People podcast community. Make sure you don't miss out on being a part of the Speak with People Facebook community group. Just head to Facebook, type in Speak with People, scroll down and join our community, because every single day we're encouraging each other. We're helping each other to improve our communication skills. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next episode.